Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, May the 26th. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jen Bordeaux, coming at you with another segment of Family Law Uncorked. And today I am joined by a face you haven't seen too much. She was featured as our team member spotlight last month, and she is the newest attorney addition to the New Direction Family Law team, Miss Kelli McGonagle. Kelli, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, Jen. Good to see you.
As well, from across town.
Yes.
And we are fully vaccinated in office. In case you haven't seen China, what's happening Wednesday, mention it, or our social media post. But we were very blessed to grow a little bit over the last year. So I don't have a place to go in the office, aside from the couch up front, which is comfy. But otherwise, so I'm still working remotely, but Zoom has offered a great platform over the last year, has been such a game changer for being able to still create content and bring educational information to our viewers. So with that being said, we wanted to bring Kelli in, one, just to kind of introduce her on the platform in a live format instead of just awesome pictures with Chewbacca with her social media posts.
I love it.
But you'll see her around the firm. She's been helping clients from day one that she steps foot in the door. And she also is the lead attorney on processing all of the absolute divorces that come through our office. So wanted to bring you right to the source as to who would be helping you with that, along with one of our paralegals, Rosa, assist with those as well and processing those. But I want to talk a little bit about this because in North Carolina, every state is different when it comes to their family laws and divorce process, or can be. I don't know if they're exactly all different, but they can definitely be different. And North Carolina, when people say just the general idea or term of I'm going through a divorce, everyone thinks that that's the being separated piece and everything that happens in that whole process. But specifically in North Carolina, and we have this information up on our website, you have to be separated for a consecutive year and a day before you can file for what's
That's right.
Absolute divorce.
Yes.
So that's what we want to talk about today, is that actual process, just to kind of clear up. We handle and help and assist clients move through that whole separation process. That's what we call it, is that's your separation period, and you've got to be separated for a year. But we want to talk about the actual legal side of filing for divorce, what that process looks like, and the fact that that's really just legally makes you be able to get married again.
Right.
So when people call our office and they speak to our wonderful client relations specialist, China, and say that they want to get started with the divorce process, one of the first questions we generally ask is, well, are you currently separated? And if they say yes, then of course we ask them how long, because that determines kind of where we go from there.
Exactly.
So if it has been less than a year, again, we go back to, okay, well, we need to talk about everything that's part of the separation process. But if it has been a year, then in our minds, we're like, okay, well, then they're eligible to file for divorce. And sometimes we get calls where people have been separated for like 10 years.
Right.
So they definitely meet that requirement. So we still, from the front end, just kind of walking it through step by step from the front end, we still schedule a consultation, even if there's really been all the other issues have been resolved or aren't really present in someone's situation on face value. We still schedule a consultation. One, to get to meet the person, and two, so that you guys as an attorney can do your due diligence and ensuring that they are good to go. So what does that mean? Like, why do you guys need to speak with someone to make sure that they're okay to file for absolute divorce? What's the risk there?
Well, there's several reasons. The first, when you use the word risk, the first thing I would say is, we need to make sure that if there's any property to distribute under equitable distribution in North Carolina, if the divorce has been entered and you haven't filed that claim, you lose that claim, along with spousal support. So it's very important that we talk to you about what property existed in the marriage, and kind of find out, if you have been separated for 10 years, maybe you've already taken care of dividing most of your property. If it's something new and you've not been separated for very long, then it's important that we talk to you about what assets and debts you have, so that, maybe we can help you with that first during that separation period. Because once the divorce is entered, you lose those claims. So that's the first thing that I always try to talk to a client about. Another thing is just making sure that you've lived in North Carolina for at least 6 months. So that's also very important, because if the court doesn't have jurisdiction, then they can't enter your divorce. And so first step is, have you been in North Carolina for 6 months, or has your spouse been here for 6 months?
Gotcha. Yeah, you don't want to potentially miss out on marital property that you could be due, I mean, looking at the marital home or any assets there, or, potentially assuming responsibility for a whole bunch of debt or something like that. So very important to make sure that those things are addressed, and is a huge part of that consultation. In addition to that, addressing child custody and child support. Now, I know that those, correct me if I'm wrong, aren't necessarily contingent on the divorce. They can always be revisited.
Correct.
But it's a great time to have that conversation. Maybe you and the co-parent have been doing well and have a great verbal agreement or process that you've been doing, but we've seen it time after time that things are great until they're not.
Exactly.
And then whatever was working in the past, verbal agreements just is blown up, and then there's no parenting agreement or court order or anything in place to address that and hold people accountable, or for people to use as a guide as to what should happen. So that's just always a good time to revisit that as well, just a focus time for that conversation. So
exactly. And those things can be addressed during that separation period. If you haven't been separated for a year, those are other things that we can address and work with you on prior to moving forward with the divorce.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great point. So then, or even if you've come to that year point where you are eligible, but those things just haven't been addressed or talked about. So that's why the initial consultation is so important and key in resolving and addressing a lot of these things. So, okay. So the person comes in, they've had a consultation, they've met the criteria. They or their spouse live in North Carolina, specifically in a county that we practice in. Have lived there for 6 months or more, and they meet the year and a day requirement to move forward with filing for divorce. So have a consultation. We send them a fee agreement. Everybody signs, retains. We're good to go to start moving forward. So what is the first step then in getting started with filing for divorce? Like, what does that mean, filing for divorce?
Well, when you file for divorce, we file a complaint, and we're just asking the court to enter the divorce. We need to, include that you or your spouse have been living in North Carolina for about 6 months' time. We include your date of marriage, when you separated, and how long you've been separated. And, if you have any minor children, those get included. That nobody is a minor or is incompetent. All these things go into the complaint that gets filed, and that is step one. And okay. Once we filed the complaint, then we need to serve the opposing party. And so that can go different ways. COVID has changed some things for us. And if you don't know where your spouse is, then, we have ways to help try to find, where they are, or we can always serve them through publication. So that's kind of the next step after we get the complaint filed, is just to serve them so they're aware that you're ready to proceed forward with the divorce.
Yeah, and just for taking a step back to kind of explain that, and because we're so used to these terms, but in the general public, or until I even got into the family law field, it was jargon to me. So per the North Carolina Civil Rules of Procedure, certain legal documents have to be given, for lack of a better word, to the other party. And that's what we're talking about whenever we mean serve. So they're given these documents, serve these documents, and there's certain ways that has to be done to be compliant with the rules of civil procedure. So that's what we're talking about. Sometimes it's certified mail, meaning they have to sign for it. Sometimes it's FedEx, sometimes it's process server. An actual person saying, hey, you've been served, not just a terrible dance movie. And yeah, or by publication, as you mentioned, if maybe the last known location is, or the current known location is not available, we don't have that information. So that's why it's, that kind of getting that information is important during the consultation as well, because that can kind of affect the strategy of how things are done. So the complaint's filed, let's say in a perfect world, it's been properly served on the opposing party. So what should someone expect next?
So next we kind of wait. The other party has the opportunity to respond to the complaint that's been filed. A lot of times people don't respond. And if they don't, then we wait 30 days, which has been affected by COVID a little bit. There's been some executive orders that have been in place during COVID that give a little extra time because they're wanting people to mail things so there's less traffic at the courthouse. So you've been given some extra time, so 5 extra days there. So during that time, the other party can respond or they cannot respond. So it really kind of turns into a waiting game at that point to wait and see what the other party does. They can do nothing, which happens a lot. Sometimes they file an answer, which is their response to what we filed, and they admit all the allegations. They're in agreement. We've been separated for a year. We're ready to move on, that kind of thing. There's no real disagreement in what the complaint says. And so, if that happens, then, it's just a little bit of a waiting game to see if they do that or if they don't. Sometimes the other party can also file a waiver of their right to answer. So those are kind of some of the ways that we get a response from the opposing party or spouse.
Yeah, and it really is situationally specific.
Yes.
And the process beyond that. So once someone's been served and it's that 30-day waiting game, or if they file a waiver, or they just don't respond, or if they contend, again, it's situationally specific. But keep in mind too, for anyone watching now or later, that even though the law around this is the same in North Carolina, individual counties, and there's 100 of them in North Carolina, they can operate a little bit differently.
Exactly.
In what their process is, especially now around COVID, because there was a lot of discretion for local courts and domestic courts to figure out what process worked best for their county. So just keep that in mind as well. I mean, in the attorney that you're working with, that they're familiar with what that process is. We are, primarily in we reside. Probably feel like we live at the office sometimes. Our office is in Wake County. And so our clients are primarily from Wake County, but we do assist with absolute divorce matters as well as others in some surrounding counties. So just a tidbit to keep that in mind. So just for generality's sake, so we've served the document, and more often than not, as you mentioned, the other party just doesn't respond. So we've hit that 30-day window, and then what is the next step?
So in Wake County, let me be specific with that. We have the option for having the clerk enter the divorce judgment. And so after that 30 days, if there's been no response, then we can ask them to enter that divorce judgment. If they did respond and they admitted all the allegations, then we're still good to go to ask the clerk. The good thing about the clerk, let me just back up a little bit, is it's usually a little bit quicker turnaround time. So, for someone who's looking for that, looking for that closure faster, than with the clerk will be done typically, a few days, 3 days, 5 days after we submit the paperwork on your behalf. So that makes it nice and easy. You don't have to go to court. So that's one way. If there are other claims that are pending with the absolute divorce claim, so maybe the divorce claim was filed with child custody or filed with equitable distribution, then we would need to set it before the judge. We would no longer have the option of the clerk's divorce. Sometimes those hearings can be about a month out right now in Wake County. Again, specific to Wake County, every county is a little bit different. So it just depends on your specific county and what their time frame is. Some counties set them on specific days of the week and things like that. So, if you're not in Wake County, or, you're watching this from somewhere else, then a local attorney would be the one to help you with those local customs of when it would be set in that instance, if that helps.
Gotcha. So our divorces, if it is set before a judge, are divorces still heard on Fridays only in Wake County?
Yes, so it's still Friday in Wake County. And the good news is that with COVID, it's gone virtual. So that's been helpful. Everybody doesn't have to truck it down to the courthouse for that.
Yeah. And generally, I think, when you hear hearing, you think your mind automatically goes to the TV, right? Of like the TV shows and what you see there. And so from my experience, because I was divorced a few years ago and it was set before the judge, but, my ex wasn't contesting it. And so it wasn't a full on hearing. There was no, contestation of the separation date or anything like that. So, and correct, I don't know if it's still the same way virtually, but I know whenever it was in person, it was pretty much, I showed up with my attorney and she just submitted the paperwork to the judge to say, hey, we've checked all the boxes, done everything we're supposed to do and followed the right procedure. Just sign off on this divorce judgment, please. Like nobody had to testify. There was no, nobody there to oppose it and say, whoa, I don't agree. So is that still kind of how it works virtually?
Yeah, they really want to just check all those boxes because if it was not valid for any reason and you thought it was, and down the road you got married again, then we could have some real issues there.
Yeah.
So it really is what you're saying. It's not like the TV show. You're really just, the judge is checking the boxes, making sure everything's right, so that you can close this chapter and move forward.
Yeah. And with those, if it is, and like you said, especially these days with COVID, if it's very simple, just absolute divorce that's been filed for, a lot of them are clerks divorces. And so, like you said, efficiency wise, that's great. If it does get set for the hearing on a Friday because of the other claims involved, does our client need to show up for that virtual hearing, or is it you just show up on their behalf, make sure all the boxes are checked, the judge signs off, and then we call them and say, hey, congratulations. Generally, by the time you get to a year and a day, no matter even if you started off the process not happy about the divorce, by the time you hit that year and a day, you're like, Lord, just let me get through this and get it done. I'm ready to be divorced and not tied to this person, legally anymore like that. So is that still how it is? Does the client need to show up?
Yeah, no, the client doesn't need to be there. It's something that I'll handle and take care of, and we'll make sure all those boxes are checked, and the judge will too. And the client doesn't have to worry about signing in or appearing. And we take care of everything. And then you get that follow-up email. Congratulations, you're divorced. And then you also get a copy of the judgment so that you can move forward and you have that document and everything will be done.
Yeah. By the time you get to that point, you're like, hooray. And so with the divorce judgment, the client gets a certified copy of the divorce judgment, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. And that really comes into play, or what makes it different is that there's a raised seal on it. And where that comes into play is the first thing that comes to mind for me is the name change. That's one thing I know that we ask our clients whenever they're ready to file for divorce. Not to say exclusively necessarily, but primarily female, if they would like to resume their maiden name. And because where is that address? How does that address during when we're filing this divorce paperwork?
So it's something that we can ask for in the complaint, and we can do within the divorce to go ahead and do that name change. If it doesn't get done in the divorce, then you can file for the name change afterwards. So, it's not a done deal like alimony and equitable distribution, but you still can take that certified copy and get your name changed back to your maiden name if that's what you wanted to do and it didn't get put in the complaint. But it can be addressed in the complaint up front and everything taken care of at one time.
Right. And then you can take that certified copy to, if you are resuming or changing, back to maiden name, you can take that to all the appropriate administrations you need to get your name changed back on your social security card and all, start that whole fun process.
Exactly. Yeah. It is a process.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, this, compared to some of the other claims that we would file for with separation, I mean, this really is, I mean, we kind of joke sometimes and say like getting divorced is the easy part, because comparatively speaking, this is pretty streamlined, filing for divorce and getting through to the signed line from the judge saying that you're good to go. However, there are still some of these nuances, as we talked about, knowing the requirements for service and, what the deadlines are when you can move forward with filing for things, and, how it needs to be set, clerk's divorce in front of the judge, how all that works. So a consultation can be beneficial just to walk you through that process. At bare minimum would definitely be best practice. Some people do move forward with filing for absolute divorce by, on their own, called pro se. And I believe there is kind of a walkthrough kind of packet, like do-it-yourself packet. It doesn't provide legal advice or anything like that with it, but I think there's an online like self-help kind of packet. But bare minimum, I still think it's best practice to at least consult with a family law attorney to find out all those minute details and nuances, because it also costs money to file for it. Aside from if you have an attorney represent you, the court has an actual filing fee. So, and it's not like it's $10. I mean, it's what is it, $225?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
It's somewhere on that range, $225, $250. I promise you, Rosa knows.
Yes, Rosa does know. Yeah. You're exactly right, Jen. I think it's important because even though it is a simplified process, there's a lot of little details that you need to make sure are correct. Or if you do go represent yourself, we see a lot of things get kicked back because service wasn't proper or something was left out of the complaint. So it is very important, I think, to just have that conversation, even if you're going that direction. Make sure that you're really paying attention to those details, and that's what our job is, to make sure that all those T's get crossed and I's get dotted, and that we don't have any issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you definitely, one, just don't want to waste your money, period. You've made it to the finish line, like you're ready to have this done. Two, and if something was wrong with, or it needed to be amended, or there was improper service or something like that, the other benefit to having an attorney is that then we know how to handle that, like what needs to be done to correct that, so that we can get everything completed and wrapped up for you. So definitely pros and cons. I mean, everyone's financial situation, of course, is different, and people of all different financial backgrounds that go through divorce. So we definitely are cognizant of that and aware of that. But like I said, just best practice, at least having a consultation to find out what that process is and what all that looks like.
Definitely.
Helps, just to make sure that everything's done correctly and that you're good to go. Because like you said too earlier, you don't want to be heading into another marriage and then find out that your first valid or divorce was actually not completed correctly, and
exactly.
you're not divorced.
Exactly. That would be bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kelli, thank you so much. I hope this answers some questions for those that are watching of how that process works. Again, we talked a lot specifically, definitely to North Carolina law and specifically to Wake County. Again, we are familiar with some surrounding counties, but every county can be just a little bit different. So if you have any questions surrounding that, when you can file, where you should file, how all that works, Kelli can help you. We'll get you started and set up. You can always reach out to us by calling phone. 919-719-3470. You can always reach us here on Facebook, on our website, through Instagram. We're all over the place. You can reach us and we'll get you started. So Kelli, again, thank you so much for joining me today and walking us through this process. And we will talk to you guys next time.
Thank you, Jen.